As part of my quest to delve into the deep chasm of contradictory knowledge that is the Doctor Who wiki, I've been looking into how Dalek stories from the Stephen Moffat era of Doctor Who have been picked apart, analysed and explained by Doctor Who writers since Moffat departed as showrunner. It's an interesting phenomenon. If something doesn't quite make sense in a New Who story, chances are at some point down the line a writer for a Big Finish audio, a Doctor Who magazine fact file, or a non-narrative Doctor Who reference book will come up with some way of explaining it. A great example of this is in the book Dalek, The Astounding Untold History of the Greatest Enemies of the Universe. While I don't agree with all the conclusions this book reaches about loose ends across Dalek history, it does present some very interesting and thought-provoking explanations for aspects of the Dalek timeline that don't add up or were disappointing for fans. My favourite is the assertion that the ship that the 11th Doctor blows up in Time of the Doctor is the Parliament of the Daleks, which effectively wipes out the Paradigm Daleks, bookending the Dalek stories of the 11th Doctor's era and providing a somewhat satisfying conclusion to the Paradigm saga. But what happens if one of these reference books is released and is then subsequently proven wrong by a later episode? This is the case with the story of Rusty. The Astounding Untold History of the Greatest Enemies of the Universe was released after Into the Dalek, but before Twice Upon a Time, so the writer had no knowledge that Rusty would be included in that story, and came up with his own idea for what happened to him. According to this sourcebook, Rusty returned to his ship after the events of Into the Dalek and immediately began his crusade against the Daleks, destroying his command ship and sending the then current incarnation of the Dalek leadership into a panicked frenzy. The Daleks withdrew all of their forces from human space out of fear that other Daleks would be captured and turned just like Rusty was, but after analysing him they came to the conclusion that his change of heart was a freak accident that could not be mass replicated. However, they were unwilling to outright destroy Rusty, as his hatred was powerful and pure, so they consigned him to the Dalek Asylum, and he was presumably destroyed when the planet was obliterated by the Parliament of the Daleks. 2 months after this book was published, however, Twice Upon a Time aired, which revealed that Rusty was alive and well, having spent billions of years crusading against the Daleks and establishing a fortress in the ruins of Villengard, surrounded by rotting remains of Daleks. Does this mean that the idea presented in the source book about Rusty being condemned to the asylum is outright wrong? Well, perhaps not. Just because Rusty didn't die with the asylum doesn't mean he didn't spend time there. This is pure speculation now, but what if Rusty did end up in the asylum and subsequently escaped? What if his escape was what allowed the human vessel, the Alaska, to penetrate the asylum's supposedly impenetrable shield? The defences can be deactivated from the inside. Perhaps Rusty waited for his chance and, after noticing the incoming Alaska, took down a portion of the shield to allow it to crash before slipping away through the gap before it closed. What if, and here's some serious speculation now, what if Rusty also played a part in the Dalek pathweb being vulnerable to attack from inside the asylum? In Twice Upon a Time, we see that he's hooked up to a huge machine. Could this have been technology salvaged from the asylum? A backdoor into the pathweb that Rusty uses to stay one step ahead of the Daleks? Could Rusty have been responsible for Oswin's ability to hack into the pathweb? This might explain some of the more questionable aspects of Asylum of the Daleks. How did the Alaska breach the asylum's force field when the Paradigm's planet splitter missiles couldn't? How did Oswin manage to hack into the entire pathweb from inside the asylum? Perhaps Rusty is the answer. What do you think of this theory? Would you like to see Rusty return to the show again? Let me know in the comments below.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe to
Dalek Bumps.